The call came at 3:17 in the morning. Jonathan Roumie was already awake, staring at the ceiling of his hotel room in Atlanta, replaying the day's scenes in his mind. 12 hours of filming. His body exhausted, but his mind refusing to quiet. When the phone lit up the darkness, he almost didn't answer. A known number. Probably a wrong number or some overeager fan who'd somehow gotten his private line. But something made him swipe to answer. "Mr. Roumie?" The voice was rough, older, carrying the weight of someone who'd delivered too many pieces of bad news over too many years. "My name is Father William Chin. I'm the chaplain at Red Oak State Penitentiary in North Carolina. I apologize for calling at this hour, but I have a request that cannot wait." Jonathan sat up, suddenly alert. Prison chaplain. Middle of the night. Nothing good ever followed those words. "I'm listening," he said quietly. "There's a man here on death row. Name is Daniel Price. He's scheduled for execution in 68 hours. 3 days from now, he'll be dead." The priest paused, and Jonathan could hear something in that silence, something that felt like desperation wrapped in professional composure. "He's asking for you specifically. Says he won't speak to anyone else. Not his lawyers. Not the media. Not even me anymore. Only you." Jonathan's mind raced through possibilities. "I don't know anyone named Daniel Price. I've never heard of his case." "I didn't think you had," Father Chin replied. "But he knows you. Or rather, he knows the man you portray on screen. He says there's something he needs to tell someone before he dies. A secret he's kept for 11 years. But he'll only tell it to you because, and these are his exact words, he's the only one who'll understand what it cost me to stay silent." The weight of that statement settled into the room like a physical presence. Jonathan stood, pacing to the window where the Atlanta skyline glittered against the pre-dawn darkness. 11 years of silence. A secret kept even facing death. The rational part of his mind screamed caution. This could be manipulation, a publicity stunt, a desperate man's delusion, a way to delay the inevitable. But there was something in the chaplain's voice. Something that said this was real. What was he convicted of? Jonathan asked. Father Chin hesitated. When he spoke, his voice carried the heaviness of a truth that still haunted him. The murder of a 6-year-old girl named Emma Castellanos. It was one of the most horrific cases this state has ever seen. The evidence was overwhelming. His confession was on video. The jury took less than 2 hours to convict him. But here's what's kept me awake for 11 years, Mr. Roumie. Another pause, longer this time. In all my years as a prison chaplain, I've sat with 43 men in their final hours. 43 executions. Some went peacefully. Some went fighting. Some went still claiming innocence. But I've learned to see the difference between a guilty man seeking forgiveness and an innocent man seeking justice. And Daniel Price. The priest's voice cracked slightly. He's neither. He's something else entirely. Something I can't explain. And whatever secret he's carrying, it's bigger than his conviction. Bigger than his execution. And if he doesn't tell someone in the next 68 hours, it dies with him. Jonathan closed his eyes. He thought about the character he played, about the man who never turned away from the condemned, from the outcast, from the one everyone else had written off. He thought about the weight of that responsibility, about the line between portraying mercy and actually living it. When can I see him? Jonathan heard himself say. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll have your name added to the visitor list. Father Chin exhaled, a sound of relief mixed with something else. Apprehension, maybe? Or warning. Mr. Roumie, one more thing. When you meet Daniel Price, you need to understand something. This man confessed to killing a child. The entire nation wanted him dead. There were protests outside the courthouse demanding the death penalty. The victim's family has been waiting 11 years for justice. Whatever he tells you, whatever secret he's been keeping, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about guilt, innocence, and the choices people make when there are no good options left. The line went quiet for a moment, just the sound of breathing on both ends. I'll be there, Jonathan said finally. After he hung up, Jonathan sat in the darkness of his hotel room, the phone still warm in his hand. He pulled out his laptop and typed the name into a search engine. Daniel Price. The results flooded his screen. Headlines from 11 years ago, each one more damning than the last. Monster caught. Child killer confesses. Death penalty sought in Emma Castellanos murder. He clicked on the first article, and a photograph filled his screen. A little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile, frozen forever at 6 years old. Emma Castellanos. Missing for 3 days before her body was found in a warehouse on the outskirts of Charlotte. And below her picture, another photo. Daniel Price. Younger then, maybe 24 or 25. Hollow eyes staring at the camera during his perp walk, his face expressionless, already looking like a ghost. Jonathan read for 2 hours, until the sun began to rise over Atlanta. Every article said the same thing. Guilty. Confessed. Condemned. Justice served. The case was closed. The monster was caged. In 68 hours, he would be dead and the world would be safer for it. But something in Father Chen's voice kept echoing in Jonathan's mind. He's something else entirely. What could a man like that possibly have to say that would matter? What secret could change anything about what he'd done? And why would he only tell it to an actor who played Jesus on a television show? Jonathan didn't have answers. But he knew he had to go. Not because he believed the man was innocent. Not because he thought there was some hidden truth that would exonerate him. But because somewhere in the gap between what the world saw and what this man claimed to be carrying, there was a story that needed to be heard by someone willing to listen without judgment. And maybe that was the point. Maybe that was exactly why Daniel Price had asked for him. Jonathan Roumie booked a flight to North Carolina, leaving in 4 hours. He texted his production coordinator that he had a family emergency and needed 2 days off. He packed a small bag, showered, and tried to eat something, though his stomach was tight with an anxiety he couldn't quite name. As he headed to the airport, one thought kept circling through his mind. In 65 hours, a man would die. And before he did, he wanted to tell Jonathan a secret he'd kept for 11 years. A secret about the murder of a 6-year-old girl. A secret that, according to a priest who'd sat with 43 condemned men, was something beyond innocence or guilt. What could that possibly be? And more importantly, once Jonathan heard it, what was he supposed to do with it? The plane lifted off just as the sun fully cleared the horizon. Jonathan stared out the window at the clouds below, at the world shrinking beneath him, and wondered if he was about to step into something that would change everything he thought he understood about justice, mercy, and the terrible choices people make in the darkest moments of their lives. 65 hours until Daniel Price's execution. And Jonathan Roumie had no idea that what he was about to learn would not only save a man's life, but expose a truth so devastating that it would shake the foundations of an entire city's justice system and force him to confront the hardest question of his life. What do you do when the only way to save an innocent person is to protect a guilty one? The Red Oak State Penitentiary rose from flat North Carolina land like a monument to despair. All concrete and razor wire and the kind of silence that pressed against the chest. Jonathan sat in the visitor parking lot for 10 minutes before he could make himself walk inside. Father Chen met him at security. The priest was Chinese-American, early 60s, with eyes that had witnessed too many men die to look at the world the same way anymore. They walked through corridors where every door buzzed and clanged shut with finality. The visiting room was small. Cinder block walls. Metal table bolted to the floor. Camera blinking red in the corner. Father Chen gestured for Jonathan to sit. Before Daniel comes in, you need to know what happened 11 years ago, the priest said. Emma Castellanos was 6 years old. Went missing on her way home from school in Charlotte. 3 days later, they found her body in an abandoned warehouse. Strangled. The city was traumatized. Jonathan felt his hands clench. Police had no leads. No witnesses. No evidence. Then 4 days after they found Emma's body, Daniel Price walked into the police station and confessed. Just walked in and told them he killed her. His confession was detailed. He knew things about the crime scene that hadn't been released. He knew what she was wearing. Where she was found. The interrogation was 6 hours. His story never changed. It's on video. Then why are we here? Jonathan asked. If he confessed, if there's video evidence, What secret could possibly matter? Father Chen leaned forward. Because 3 things have never made sense. First, Daniel had no criminal record. He was a graduate student studying social work. Volunteered at a youth center teaching art to kids. The profile didn't fit at all. People hide who they are, Jonathan said. Second, the forensic evidence was weak. His fingerprints were in the warehouse, but he'd been there before doing outreach work with homeless populations. They never found his DNA on her body. Never found her DNA in his apartment. Never found any physical evidence beyond his confession. What's the third thing? Father Chen's eyes locked onto Jonathan's. In 11 years, Daniel has never shown remorse the way you'd expect. He's never begged Emma's mother for forgiveness. Never broken down crying about taking a child's life. But every single day he asks me to pray for Emma. And every single time his exact words are, "I'm sorry I couldn't save her." Not, "I'm sorry I killed her." "I'm sorry I couldn't save her." I've asked him what he means for 11 years. His answer is always, "I can't tell you. Not yet. Not until the time is right." The room felt smaller. Jonathan felt goosebumps rise. "And now?" he asked. "Now he says the time is right. But only if he can tell you." The priest's voice carried warning. "Whatever he's about to tell you will challenge everything you think you know. And it's going to ask you to make a choice no one should have to make." The door buzzed open. A guard stepped in, followed by a man in orange, hands cuffed. Daniel Price. Thinner than his mugshot. Gray streaking his hair. But his eyes were clear, calm, carrying something unexpected. Not the dead emptiness of a killer. Not desperate pleading. Something else. Something that looked like peace wrapped in profound sadness. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said quietly as he sat across from Jonathan. His voice was soft, gentle. Not what Jonathan expected from a man who confessed to strangling a child. "I know what you must think of me. What everyone thinks. And I need you to know I deserve to die for what happened to Emma Castellanos. I'm not here to claim innocence. I'm not here to ask you to save me." "Then why am I here?" Jonathan asked. Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Jonathan saw fear and courage flickering in those eyes. "Because I didn't kill Emma Castellanos," Daniel said. "But I know who did. And the only way to prove it is to tell you why I confessed to a murder I didn't commit. And once you know the truth, Mr. Roumie, you're going to have to decide whether justice means letting me die for a crime I didn't do, or exposing a truth that will destroy innocent lives and let a real monster walk free." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jonathan stared at this man who had spent 11 years on death row protecting a secret. A man who said, "I couldn't save her," instead of, "I killed her." A man who was about to ask him to make an impossible choice. "Tell me," Jonathan said finally. "Tell me everything." Daniel Price took a breath and began to speak the truth he'd carried in silence for 11 years. Daniel Price's hands trembled as he leaned forward. The chains rattled softly. He looked at Jonathan as if memorizing his face, gathering courage to speak words held for 11 years. "The night Emma died, I was at that warehouse doing outreach," Daniel began quietly. "Around 8 p.m., I heard a child crying. I followed the sound and found Emma. She was alive. Terrified, but alive. And standing over her was Detective Marcus Hale." Jonathan's breath caught. "Charlotte, PD, decorated officer. 20 years on the force," Daniel continued. He had his hands around her throat. I froze. Long enough for him to see me. He let go. Emma collapsed, gasping. Hale looked at me with calculation in his eyes. I ran to help Emma, but Hale was faster. He threw me against the wall. When I could see again, Emma wasn't moving anymore. The room felt smaller, colder. "Hale told me exactly what would happen," Daniel said, voice steady despite tears forming. "If I told anyone, my little brother would disappear. Michael was 14. Learning disabled. Vulnerable. Hale said he had connections. Resources. He'd make Michael vanish and no one would suspect a detective. He staged the scene. Put my fingerprints everywhere. Told me exactly what to confess to. Said if I cooperated, they'd execute me eventually but Michael would live. If I fought, Michael would die and I'd still go to prison anyway. You had to choose, Jonathan whispered. 60 seconds to decide between my life and my brother's life. So I walked into that police station and confessed. 11 years on death row protecting Michael from a monster with a badge. Jonathan felt sick. Why now? What's changed? 2 weeks ago, Michael sent me a letter. He's 25 now. Married. His wife is pregnant with a girl. Daniel's voice cracked. He's naming her Emma, after the girl whose death he thinks I caused. He wants to bring his daughter to meet me before I die. To let me bless her. Daniel wiped his eyes. I can't hold a baby named after a child I couldn't save. Michael spent his adult life thinking his brother is a monster. That baby deserves the truth. Emma's mother deserves justice. And Michael deserves to know I didn't kill a child. Hale will come after your brother, Jonathan said. Hale retired 3 years ago. He's 71 now with stage 4 lung cancer. 6 months to live, maybe. The threat isn't what it was. He's dying. And I have 53 hours. If we move fast, we expose him before I die and Michael's family stays safe. Daniel pulled out a folded paper, slid it across the table. There was another witness that night. Teresa Morrison. Homeless woman who lived in the warehouse. She saw everything. Hale thought she was too high to remember, too unreliable to matter. But she's been clean for 8 years. Runs a recovery house in Asheville. Her information is on that paper. Jonathan stared at the name and address. Father Chin helped me track her, Daniel continued. We've been waiting 3 years. Waiting until Hale was weak. Waiting for someone with a platform big enough to make people listen. Someone who could reach Teresa before Hale's connections figured out what we were doing. You planned this, Jonathan said. For 3 years. This is strategy, not desperation. My one chance to die with truth told, my brother protected, and a child murderer exposed. But you have to move fast. 53 hours. Jonathan looked at Father Chin, who nodded confirmation. If we do this, Jonathan said carefully, there's no guarantee we stop your execution in time. You could still die. I know, Daniel said simply. But I'd die with my brother knowing the truth. With that baby growing up knowing Uncle Daniel wasn't a monster. With Emma's real killer facing justice. That's worth dying for. Jonathan folded the paper into his pocket. His hand shook but his voice was steady. Tell me everything about that night. Every detail. Everything Teresa would have seen. Daniel smiled for the first time. Sad, tired, relieved. Thank you for believing me. I don't know if I believe you yet, Jonathan admitted. But you deserve someone to find the truth. So let's find it. They talked for an hour. Daniel spoke. Jonathan listened. Father Chin took notes. A plan formed. Expose a dying detective. Save an innocent man. 53 hours to work. The clock was ticking. Jonathan left the prison at noon with Teresa Morrison's address in his pocket. Asheville was 3 hours away. 53 hours until Daniel's execution. Every minute counted. He called his production manager from the car. Family emergency. Need 3 days. He hung up before they could argue. A man's life was more important than a TV show. Father Chin navigated while Jonathan drove too fast. The priest had planned this for 3 years. Now it was real and the weight showed in his silence. What if she doesn't remember? Jonathan asked. She remembers, Father Chin said quietly. You don't forget watching a detective murder a child. They reached Asheville at 3 p.m. The recovery house was modest, flowers lining the walkway. A sign read, New Beginnings Recovery. Jonathan knocked. A woman in her 50s answered. Gray hair. Kind eyes that had seen darkness. She looked at Father Chin with recognition, then at Jonathan. Her eyes widened. I know you. You're that actor. My name is Jonathan Roumie. We need to talk about Emma Castellanos. Teresa's face went pale. Her hand gripped the doorframe. I don't talk about that. A man dies in 50 hours for a crime he didn't commit, Jonathan said. Daniel Price. You know he's innocent because you were there. Teresa's eyes filled with tears. I was high. Homeless. No one would believe me. I believe you, Jonathan said. Tell me what you saw. Because if you don't, an innocent man dies and the real killer walks free. Fear and guilt warred on Teresa's face. Finally, she stepped aside. Come in. They sat in her small office. Teresa made tea with shaking hands. Then she spoke. I was living in that warehouse. March 14th, 11 years ago. Around 8 p.m., I heard crying. I saw a little girl. And Detective Hale. He was talking to her, asking where she lived. But Emma was crying for her mama, getting louder. Hale looked nervous. Then he grabbed her throat. Told her to shut up. Jonathan recorded everything on his phone. That's when Daniel showed up. Running, yelling for Hale to stop. Hale let go for a second. Daniel tried to reach Emma, but Hale threw him against the wall. Daniel went down. Teresa's voice broke. Then Hale put his hands back on Emma's throat and squeezed until she stopped moving. I should have done something. Screamed. Called for help. But I was terrified. He was a cop with a gun. I was nobody. What happened next? Father Chin asked gently. Hale staged everything. Took Daniel's jacket, pressed Daniel's hands on things. Daniel was barely conscious, bleeding. Hale made it look like Daniel did it. Then he just walked out. Why didn't you come forward later? Jonathan asked. Tried. 5 years ago. Went to a lawyer. He said without evidence, it was my word against a decorated detective. Former addict. Homeless. I'd get destroyed on the stand. So I stayed quiet. She looked at her hands. I've hated myself for it every day. Jonathan leaned forward. Teresa, I need you to tell this on camera. Right now. Then come back to Charlotte with us. We have 50 hours. Will you help us? She nodded. That man spent 11 years in prison because I was too scared to speak. I won't let him die for it too. They recorded her testimony. 47 minutes of detailed, credible testimony. When they finished, Jonathan knew they had something powerful. But they needed more before anyone would believe a homeless addict over a decorated detective's reputation. Father Chin made calls while Jonathan drove back toward Charlotte. By the time they hit the highway, they had 3 appointments: Daniel's original defense attorney, a forensic expert, and a journalist who'd covered the trial. 49 hours left. 3 meetings. 1 chance. Jonathan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know what you're doing. Stop now or people get hurt. He showed Father Chin. The priest's face went grim. Hale knows. How? Prisons talk. Someone told him about your visit. If he's threatening us, he's scared. We're on the right track. Also means we're in danger, Jonathan said. Yes. Which means we move faster. Jonathan pressed the accelerator. Somewhere behind them, a dying detective scrambled to protect his secret. Somewhere ahead, an innocent man counted down his final hours. And in between, Jonathan was betting that truth could outrun lies. 48 hours until Daniel Price's execution. The race was on. Jonathan spent the next 36 hours building a case he didn't know how to fight. Racing a clock that didn't care about justice. The defense attorney met them first. Marcus Reed, who'd quit Daniel's case 11 years ago. He listened to Teresa's testimony, face darkening. I knew something was wrong. Daniel refused any defense. Wouldn't explain why. Just kept saying he was guilty. Reed looked at Jonathan. But this won't be enough. Teresa's credible, but she's a former addict who waited 11 years. We need more. We need Hale himself. Jonathan had an idea. Dangerous, but they were out of time. What if I go to him? Make him think he's already caught? Record the conversation. Dying men with nothing to lose sometimes confess. Father Chin shook his head. Too dangerous. We're out of options, Jonathan said. 30 hours until execution. Lakeside Estates retirement community. Peaceful. Quiet. Jonathan found Hale's unit overlooking a manufactured lake. He knocked. The man who answered looked like death. 71 but seeming 90. Gaunt. Yellow skin. Oxygen tank beside him. But his eyes were sharp. Predator's eyes. I wondered when you'd show up, Marcus Hale said, voice like gravel. The actor playing Jesus. Come to save another lost soul? I'm here about Daniel Price. And Emma Castellanos. Hale's expression didn't change. Two names that don't concern you. I have a witness. Someone who saw what really happened. Something flickered in Hale's eyes. Witnesses can be unreliable. Especially homeless drug addicts. Teresa Morrison, isn't it? I remember her from the warehouse. Jonathan's phone recorded everything from his shirt pocket. Hale just admitted knowing Teresa was there. She remembers you strangling a 6-year-old girl, Jonathan said. Hale laughed. Wet, rattling. Who's going to believe a junkie versus a decorated detective? I've got 40 commendations. Mayor's medal. Even if you make noise, I'll be dead in 3 months. Stage 4 lung cancer. And Daniel? Dead in 30 hours. Problem solved. Why did you kill her? Hale's smile faded. Something almost human flickered. Wrong place. Wrong time. Bad day. Wife left me. Found out about her affair. I was angry. Saw the kid walking alone. She started screaming. I wanted her to shut up. Then Daniel showed up and complicated everything. So you destroyed his life to save yours. I gave him a choice. His life or his brother's. He chose. Hale looked at Jonathan with contempt. You think recording this conversation makes you righteous? I'm dying anyway. But I can still hurt people you care about. That priest. Teresa. Your TV friends. One phone call and accidents happen. Walk away. Let Daniel die. Let me die. Or more innocent people suffer. I'm not walking away. Hale's eyes hardened. Then you're a fool. The door slammed. Jonathan stood there, recording for 30 more seconds. His hand shook. He had it. Full confession. Everything they needed. He called Father Chin. I got it. Full confession. That's incredible. He threatened us. Said he'd hurt people. Silence. Then, we're past backing off. We move forward or Daniel dies. 28 hours left. They met with journalist Sarah Kim. She'd covered Daniel's trial, never felt right about it. Jonathan played Hale's confession. Her eyes went wide. This is huge. I'm filing tonight. Runs online at midnight. Front page tomorrow. The governor will have to respond. Father Chin contacted the Innocence Project. National advocates. Anyone with pull. We flood the zone. Make it impossible to ignore. Jonathan posted on social media. Short video. I'm in Charlotte investigating Daniel Price's case. I have evidence he's innocent. Please share this. Within 2 hours, 1 million views. Comments flooded in. People demanding justice. Tagging news outlets. Politicians. The story exploded. 24 hours remained. And somewhere in that retirement community, a dying detective was making phone calls of his own. 18 hours before execution, the story broke everywhere. Charlotte Observer front page. National news. Jonathan's video hit 5 million views. Justice for Daniel trended #1. Governor's statement, reviewing new information. No decision yet. 12 hours remained. Jonathan, Father Chin, and Teresa camped outside the governor's mansion. Teresa told her story on live television, voice shaking but steady. I saw Detective Hale murder Emma Castellanos. I watched him frame Daniel Price. I'm not afraid anymore. Vigils formed outside the prison. Thousands holding candles. Emma's mother Sophia gave a statement. If Daniel didn't kill my daughter, I've spent 11 years hating an innocent man. Please, Governor, give us time to find the truth. 8 hours left. No word. Then Hale's former partner came forward. Retired Officer James Wu held a press conference. Marcus was under investigation for excessive force 11 years ago. Emma's case conveniently ended that. I always wondered why he accepted Daniel's confession so quickly. Now I know. 4 hours before execution, Daniel was moved to death watch. His brother Michael arrived with his pregnant wife. Through glass, phones pressed to ears. I never killed that little girl, Daniel told his brother for the first time. I did it to protect you. Michael sobbed. I should have believed you. Take care of your daughter. Name her Emma. Let her know her uncle wasn't a monster. 2 hours left. Jonathan stood outside with thousands. His phone exploded with calls. He ignored everything. Then at 10:17 p.m., 43 minutes before execution, Father Chen burst through the doors. Breathless. The governor granted a stay. 60 days. Full investigation. Daniel's execution is postponed. The crowd erupted. Jonathan's knees buckled. Father Chen caught him. Inside, a guard told Daniel, "Your execution has been stayed." Daniel closed his eyes, tears streaming. For the first time in 11 years, he hoped. The investigation moved fast. Hale's attorney claimed the confession was coerced, that Hale was medicated and confused. Police union backed him. But forensic analysis of the recording proved Hale was coherent, revealing details only the killer would know. The district attorney reopened the case. Emma's body was exhumed. New DNA technology. Results came back 2 weeks later. DNA under Emma's fingernails belonged to Marcus Hale. Conclusive. Witness testimony. Recorded confession. DNA evidence. Hale was arrested in his retirement community and charged with murder. He died 3 weeks later in prison. Cancer took him before trial. But the truth was out. 43 days after the stay, Daniel Price walked out of prison a free man. Charges dropped. Conviction vacated. The state apologized. Jonathan was there. Father Chen, Teresa, Michael with newborn baby Emma, and Sophia Castellanos, Emma's mother. She approached Daniel slowly. He braced himself. She hugged him, held him. "I'm sorry for what you went through. Thank you for trying to save my daughter." Daniel broke. 11 years released. "I'm sorry I couldn't save her." "You tried. You ran toward her, not away. That's what heroes do." Two people bound by tragedy, finding peace in truth. That evening, Daniel held his niece for the first time. Baby Emma. He looked at her tiny face and made a promise. "I'll tell you about the first Emma. About her smile, her kindness. And I'll tell you how people fought for truth. So you grow up knowing justice is worth fighting for, even when it costs everything." Jonathan flew back to Atlanta. Returned to set. His director pulled him aside. "What you did was incredible." "I just showed up," Jonathan said. "You showed up when it mattered. That's everything." 6 months later, Jonathan received a package. Inside was a photograph. Daniel holding baby Emma in sunlight. Teresa and Father Chen beside them. Michael and his wife. All together. All healing. A note in Daniel's handwriting. "You asked why I chose you. I'd watched your show. Seen how you portrayed someone who never turned away from the condemned. I hoped you'd be brave enough to live that in real life, not just on screen. You saved my life by choosing to see me as human. That's the real miracle." Jonathan sat with that photograph, thinking about everything. A 3:17 a.m. phone call. A prison visit. A witness finding courage. A dying detective's confession. A community demanding justice. A baby named after a murdered child. People asked how it felt to save an innocent man. Jonathan always said, "I didn't save anyone. I just showed up." Teresa saved Daniel by speaking. Father Chen saved him by never giving up. The public saved him by demanding truth. Emma's mother saved him by choosing forgiveness. Daniel saved himself by choosing his brother's life. But late at night, Jonathan knew something had changed in him. He'd spent years playing a role about mercy and redemption. Then life asked him to prove he believed those things himself. The lesson wasn't about innocence or guilt. It was simpler and harder. About showing up. About listening to the voice that says, "This person needs you." About choosing to care when caring costs something. About believing truth matters even when lies are easier. Daniel spent 11 years protecting someone he loved. Jonathan spent 72 hours fighting for someone he'd never met. Teresa spoke after 11 years of silence. Each person made a choice: show up or walk away. Speak or stay silent. Fight or surrender. Those choices, small and human and imperfect, added up to justice. Not clean movie justice. The messy, complicated, hard-won justice of real life where good people make mistakes and broken systems sometimes get fixed and truth takes time, but eventually, if enough people care, it wins. Jonathan hung the photograph beside his desk. Whenever he wondered if anything mattered, he'd look at it. Daniel smiling. Baby Emma alive and loved. A family reunited. People who'd been strangers bound by shared purpose. And he'd remember, miracles don't require supernatural intervention. They require ordinary people deciding to be extraordinary in the moment it matters most. Daniel went on to work with the Innocence Project, helping others fight for freedom. Teresa expanded her recovery house, naming it Emma's House. Father Chun started a ministry connecting death row inmates with advocates. Michael raised his daughter with stories about sacrifice and courage. Marcus Hale's legacy was destroyed. Commendations revoked. Name removed from honor rolls. History remembered him not as a decorated detective but as a child murderer who hid behind a badge. Jonathan returned to his work, but everything was different. He understood that the character he played wasn't just ancient history. It was a template for how to move through the world. Eyes open to suffering, hands ready to help, heart willing to care. Years later, when young actors asked about using their platform, Jonathan would tell them about a man on death row. About 72 hours that changed everything. About a choice we all face, to see or look away. To act or stay comfortable. To believe one person can make a difference. We think miracles have to be supernatural, he'd say. But sometimes the most profound miracle is just showing up. Just caring when it's easier not to. Just fighting for truth when everyone says it's too late. Not that God reached down from heaven, but that God works through ordinary people who decide to be extraordinary. The story became more than wrongful conviction overturned. It became a reminder that we all have moments where we choose to see or ignore, to act or remain passive. Jonathan chose to see, chose to act, chose to believe. And that choice saved a life. Not because he was special, because he was willing. The photograph still hangs in his office. Daniel and baby Emma in sunlight. A moment when hope overcame despair. When truth overcame injustice. When humanity overcame failure. It reminds him daily, we are all capable of being part of someone else's miracle. We just have to be willing to show up. To care. To fight for truth. To see another human being and choose not to walk away. That choice, repeated by enough people at the right moments, can change the world. One life at a time. One act of courage at a time. One decision to care at a time. And that is the greatest miracle of all.